Okay, so I kind of wanted to take a second here away from the heavily edited comedy, infotainment type of stuff, and have a conversation about something that I think is like actually important. I notice in the comments that I'm getting on the live streams, as well as the YouTube video, as well as what I'm just seeing from like the demographic that's enjoying this type of content, is very primarily there seems to be a significant number of new players into going into Path of Exile 2. I'm talking people that never played Path of Exile 1, maybe even people new to the genre itself. And the thing about it is a lot of the content that you're seeing is either presuming previous knowledge of not only the game, but of conversations that maybe have arrived around the ARPG genres and Path of Exile in particular. One such example would be things like build guides. Okay, you'll see people that would suggest, like I typically suggest, just play the game. You see people that suggest use a build guide, etc. Or there will be conversations like meta conversations around like, should you use a build guide? What does it actually mean? But the reality is a lot of people coming in aren't even familiar with like these types of concepts. So what I want to do in this video is just kind of give a general talk on Path of Exile 2 in my basic suggestions in terms of just enjoy the game and some things to kind of avoid for people that are maybe entirely new to not only the game, but the genre. Path of Exile 2 is what, in my opinion, is going to be sort of a rare breed in ARPGs. It's sort of a meeting pot where we're seeing people come from Path of Exile 1, we're seeing people come from Diablo 4, we're seeing from Last Epoch, and from all of the ARPG genre. People are sort of meeting in the middle, and you can see some conflicting opinions, conversations, around the game overall, and it can be kind of confusing. So for Path of Exile 2, I want to just right from the beginning say this. It is, in my opinion, going to be like a generational type of game because we are seeing so many people come to it. I think it's going to be the type of game, unless it's just like a super early hot take and ends up being absolutely terrible and this ages like milk. I think this game is legitimately going to be like the pinnacle of ARPGs, or at least up there for a while. And it's going to be 5 years, 10-year plus style of game, just like Path of Exile 1 was. On the release of the original Path of Exile 1, it took some time to get to the point where we saw all of the things and now has into it and to earn the respect and all of that of the people by so long. And you probably have thought when you see Path of Exile 2, like one of the most common comments I see is that Path of Exile 2 seems like, extremely overhyped, or I don't believe the hype, or it seems like people are just jumping on the hype train. I want to address that is sort of one of the first points. Part of the reason you're seeing this and people like myself coming up here and being so excited about this, because I've been very vocal before about games like Ashes of Creation or Star Citizen, like these games that I see so much hype for to levels that seem astronomical and promises of what it's going to deliver and basically promise to be the next thing in the genre. It's hard for me to believe these level of hype when I see them because of how much press I'm seeing around it. And a lot of times these are in early access, much like Path of Exile 2 is going to be. So you're probably seeing some like contradiction in terms of like, how can you be so excited when you typically aren't so excited in like early access in these other games, but yet everyone's so excited in Path of Exile 2. And if you're new to the Path of Exile game or the genre or the company and its reputation, that's probably very confusing. It can almost seem like maybe it's like a scam, or I don't really like get like, why is this one so it's still early access? It costs $30 to get in. Like, what's going on? And so the first bit to answer that is GGG, which is, Grinding Gear Games, the company that has basically developed Path of Exile 2, as well as obviously Path of Exile 1, has earned a reputation over the last 10 years of like under promise, over deliver. Not only the quantity of content they've pumped out for the original game, but the quality of content in terms of cadence, performance, and you can kind of go down the line, but has been fairly significant. I myself am fairly newer within Path of Exile. And I say that only having like 1,400 hours in, which is still like, only in any other game that'd be an expertise, but that's because of the, the quantitative amount of content you see in Path of Exile 1. But even during my time in the game, I have seen both the quality and quantity of content come to the original Path of Exile one in just the amount of time. So first of all, you have statements, performance of actions, as well as things like transparency. When they have an issue, they basically come up, say exactly what the issue is almost immediately, et cetera. I think a good example of this would have been there was a major patch that was trying to be deployed in order to get Path of Exile 2 ready, and the most recent delay, the delaying it from November 15th to December 6th, they had to kind of come up there with just a fairly heartfelt apology, like, we're really sorry, here's what's going on, and it's believable would be a terminology I would use. The other part I'm going to use, which is it is going to be personal information as opposed to, more objective information. But I've had the opportunity to speak with the devs in person, off camera, that was not used as content. And I've got to tell you, while I enjoyed the game of Path of Exile 1 before, I started what I would consider like trusting the game or the company, or at least having belief in the company, which is something that I believe in modern society, belief in companies is sort of a foregone. I mean, it's very, very rare that there's actually a company you believe in or a product you believe in. Like, people have become skeptical for good reason due to under-delivered promises from larger corporations, et cetera. So people don't really tend to give that faith in a product or company very often. But in my communications and interactions, I'm going to say with Jonathan Rogers in particular, the man who's sort of the major lead on the Path of Exile 2 project, I have come to wholeheartedly believe the man is multiple things. One of which is a person that actually knows his product demographic and how to accomplish what he's setting out to do, actually enjoys the own game in which he is playing and understands the game as well as an honest person. So I have some personal belief in the company due to the nature of the person that is primarily representing the company, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's my personal reason that I am allowing myself to sort of get on the hype train for Path of Exile 2, as well as hopefully somewhat of an answer as to why you're seeing so much of a hype train from so many different creators within the ARPG scene. It's more than just everyone is trying to farm the latest game and we'll go farm the next one. There's always that percentage of it. Obviously, I'm going to post videos for the game that's the most hype in the ARPG scene as now, but there is legitimate belief in the company as well as the product behind it, with basically every creator that you could think or name. I don't really know, to be honest, of anyone in the field that I've talked to personally, professionally, whatever you want to call it, that feels other than like an overwhelming faith in the company, essentially, which is exceedingly rare in the gaming ARPG market. Now, another conversation you might see as, tending to Path of Exile 2, if you are a newer player, is about blind. There's been some recent drama. I won't go into this about, stuff getting spoiled. There wasn't really anything major spoiled, but in terms of should you go into the game blind? Should you use a build guide? Like, why is this such a big conversational point? And there's multiple reasons behind this, and I'll just kind of explain this for people that might decide to play the game and want to really know what the decision is to make. I myself, as someone who, would benefit from you watching and absorbing my content, would actually heavily recommend to you to basically do the opposite, which is I would suggest to keep yourself as clean and virgin snow as possible in terms of how much content that you absorb with the game. The only reason I say this is because Path of Exile 2 in and of itself is actually doing a very good job, in my experience of playing it, of explaining the game to you. I don't think this is a situation in which you need to download build guide. I know you people don't really have guides out, at the moment, literally anyway, due to the nature of the game really hasn't been, explored as often as some of the other games. But I don't think this is a game in which you have to download 13 billion programs and all of that in order to be able to enjoy it from the beginning. I think this is the type of game that you can, as a newer player, go into it and actually have the game itself sort of handhold you, at least from the beginning, to be able to understand it. And if you hit a wall, feel free to absorb these other things. I do think there will come a point when the end game, when you're feeling not maybe as much power as you would like, and you're going to begin to do some research. But I do think there is an argument to be made that going into the game and experiencing it for yourself is now a possibility. This might seem contradictory due to, if you've done any research about the original Path of Exile game, you're going to see almost always unanimously people recommending you to have a build guide from the beginning. And that is because Path of Exile 1 did not do the things that Path of Exile 2 are doing in order to handhold you, teach you the game, or keep you from basically corrupting your character. While your character can be salvaged in the in-game, it was more difficult in Path of Exile 1 to be able to get an enjoyable experience without some outside information. This is probably the most common complaint of Path of Exile 1 and is a large portion of the reason that the Path of Exile 1, while it was considered a great game, didn't 100% dominate like all of the market and everyone's unanimously playing it on console and PC and it's just like obvious it won, is because Path of Exile 1 is not very friendly to new players. And that is why you see so much recommendation around spreadsheets and build guides and programs, etc. And I think Path of Exile 2 is going to do a phenomenal job, in my experience, of playing the game at avoiding these same pitfalls for the newer players. So I don't think that's something you need to worry about as well, which is part of the reason I would suggest to you to maybe play the game for yourself before you actually go down the rabbit hole of try-hard min-maxing. Now, if there are a type of player that are hyper-competitive players or they get the enjoyment from games, from progressing as quickly as possible, if you're one of these people, I absolutely understand. I played League of Legends for 10 years, and I had a roommate at the time who we would play every single day together, and he was more competitive than myself. And I won't say I'm casual because I definitely wasn't casual in League of Legends, but my mentality was different around more having fun. But like I also wanted to climb rank as opposed to like climbing rank is the purpose of having fun. They were sort of different. So I can understand those concepts, and I know that this is fundamentally something that's just different nature of different people, and there's nothing wrong with that. So if you want to go down the min-max try-hard strat, 07 to you. I hope you blast through the campaign and enjoy it. The other reason I think a lot more people are going to be coming into this game from outside of the Path of Exile community is obviously cross-play, cross-progression, couch co-op, and also the campaign itself is doing a much better job at actually being a campaign as opposed to just continual boss fights or minions you slash through. There's actually a cinematic that sort of sets up what the story is actually going to be. There's continual other cutscenes in between the acts, and even if you're not really fully paying attention, you can sort of pseudo understand what's going on just by nature of the way they present the game from the beginning, which I think is significantly more enjoyable. I also think that if you're not worried about blasting through, listening to the voice lines, etc., Path of Exile 1 did a phenomenal job at actually having fantastic voice acting, having great music. The audio in general in the game is actually very enjoyable, so I think Path of Exile 2 is going to be the type of game that you can actually play through and enjoy from a more standard video game playthrough, if you understand what I'm saying, as opposed to only a systems-based ARPG in which the only thing that matters is items, power, build, etc. I think once you've put a certain amount of hours into the game becomes that, but I think for most people that are deciding to play through the game near the beginning of the game, I absolutely can recommend to you that I don't think there's anything wrong with just playing the game through like a standard game in the beginning. So these are a couple of like the primary points of conversation that I'm actually seeing being brought up in the game in particular. I think that these are my thoughts on the matter. And to be honest, I hope that you all just have a really great time. To the people that are already part of the Path of Exile community, I implore you to welcome other people into the game. I think Path of Exile 2 is going to be the great melting pot in which all of the other genres and other people outside of the genres, etc., are going to come in. And I've very often seen the argument where it's like, hey, maybe you should play Path of Exile. It's the greatest ARPG in the genre, and you guys firmly believe that it is. I am of the same opinion, but then every now and then I would see the same type of people that are saying, Path of Exile is the best, ever. This is the game you should play. Why are you playing other games? And then some people come in to play Path of Exile and are, overloaded with the information, etc. And then they get told, well, just go play Diablo 4. You're not smart enough for this game or something. So I would completely recommend to people that are like myself, that are enjoying Path of Exile and have some hours into it, to go back and remember what it felt like the first time you played it, and to be friendly and welcoming to the new people coming into the community. And I think that this also would extend to people like content creators. I understand there's also some arguments to be made about whether or not putting up build guides and all of this information early can be considered bait or not. But I think it's a fantastic opportunity in Path of Exile 2 to sort of have a great reset and really enjoy the community, being positive and hyped around the game that is actually going to be fantastic, and to have that community grow. If Path of Exile 2 is what I believe it will be, then I do think in this type of scenario, Path of Exile 2 is going to be the greatest ARPG in the genre and does not need to have anything be proved. I think it will prove itself, and therefore we don't need to sell his pitch to other people. It's the greatest and go out and kind of do all of that type of stuff. I think it will speak for itself, and you can, if you're a Path of Exile huge fan, you can rest assured in the fact that Path of Exile is essentially winning the fight by proof of good gameplay. So that would be my argument to everyone outside of the community, inside of the community. I hope you all enjoy the game. I myself am going to enjoy the game a lot, and it's one of these types of games where it doesn't even matter if I was making content on it. I would be playing this game regardless. I legitimately enjoyed every second of me playing when I flow down to test the early access. All of the positivity you're seeing from other people, I can attest to, are legitimate from the people who have actually played it. They have reason to have legitimate excitement, and I'm very excited to see Path of Exile 2 bring in a large community that we can all love and enjoy the fact that we are actually just getting a banger game to play in a genre maybe you enjoy, maybe you're new to the genre, and we can all enjoy that together. So that's just my message to Path of Exile 2, perspective or for sure players, and I hope you have a wonderful day.